So here we have the key triangle really for this LNA 500 course. And we're going to be working around the three corners of this triangle, knowing the demands, that's knowing the demands of a task or what you're asking your learners to do in terms of maths. Secondly, then knowing the learner, so coming to an understanding of what are the existing skills that your learners have, and is there then a gap between the demands of what you're asking them to do and their existing skills? And there probably is going to be, and so you then come to the third corner of the triangle, is then knowing what to do, knowing how to bridge that gap or scaffold some ideas and activities into that gap in order that your learners will be able to cope with the demands of your task, of your course more easily. So here we are in the first corner of our triangle, knowing the demands. And what you now need to do is think forward into the various courses that you're teaching and identify a class session, a teaching session, where your learners will require some math skills in order to complete that lesson. What would be good is to actually also identify perhaps a class session where you know that the math skills that you're going to be asking your students to have, you have previously found to be a bit of a challenge to your learners. Because as we go around the triangle further, the aim is that we're going to build some skills into your learners so that they can perform those numeracy skills more easily. So you need to think forward and identify a class session where you know there are going to be some demands, some numeracy or mathematical demands upon your students. So having identified a task where there is some maths involved, within a teaching session in the future, we now want to progress to uh, mapping the demands, the numeracy demands of that task. Now, the TEC, in conjunction with the National Centre of Literacy and Numeracy for Adults, developed a framework in order that we can map the level of demand of the numeracy or the maths within a particular task. It is just a framework. And my suggestion at this point is that you might go to the National Centre of Literacy and Numeracy for Adults and just spend a little bit of time having a look at the what we call the progressions. So I'm hoping that you've now come to a level of understanding of the structure that has been put into place by the TEC and the National Centre of Literacy and Numeracy for Adults in order that we can unpack the level of difficulty of a particular numeracy or maths task or maths activity. I think at this stage you just need to double check that you do have an understanding of the three different strands, the different progressions within the strands, and also the step levels. The step levels go from 1 to 6, and the higher up the step levels you go, then the more complex the calculation or the demand of the task is. It is possible to even place a small individual calculation onto the progression charts. So here we have on this particular slide a single calculation, find 35% of $30, and I want you to, for a few minutes, to think of the different ways that this calculation might be successfully completed. uh, Learners would have multiple ways of doing this question. There's not just one way of doing it. And then when you've got a few different solutions in front of you, think through what would be the key skills which an understanding that a learner would need in order to successfully complete this calculation. So this table now is an attempt to unpack the demands of the question, find 35% of $30. Over on the left hand side, I've listed down some of the key skills and some of the understanding that would be required by a learner in order to successfully complete the calculation. So at the top of the left-hand side, I'm thinking, well, one of the ways of getting closer to this question would that you could understand that 10% of $30 is $3, and so then 30% would be $9. This is proportional reasoning. And so I've gone into the progressions and I have found the proportional reasoning strategy, and I've tried to place this uh, this understanding onto that progression, and it will come out at about step 5, and the middle column is really just a reflection of what the proportional reasoning strategy um, sort of statement is from the chart. So on page 10, at step 5 in the proportional reasoning strategy, it says that learners solve problems by deriving from known fractions, decimals, or percentages. So I placed that at step 5 under proportional reasoning strategies. There are some number facts which a student would need to have an understanding of, and there are place value ideas also. Not trying to place this calculation onto every progression within the booklet. It's just the key ones that we're interested in. So I think on this particular question, I've come out with 3 key places where this calculation might be placed in the progressions. 2 of them are at step 5 and 1 of them's at step 4. So I'm left with a sense that if I'm asking students to find 35% of $30, then they need to be working at around step 5 on the progressions in order to be able to successfully complete that calculation. It is probably going to be much more useful to us to understand the demands of a larger task than just a single calculation. Here's a task about building a concrete path that is often used down at the trades campus. What I want you to do is not actually work out the answer to it, but to think through again what would be the key skills and the key bits of understanding that a student would need to have in order to be able to successfully complete this task. So this chart again tries to illustrate the key pieces of understanding and the key skills that a learner would need to have in order to complete the concrete pathway task. Over on the left hand side, I've listed in my own words some of the skills which a learner would need. They're skills concerning volume and conversion, and and also about the finding of costs. I've then gone to the learning progressions, and I've tried to place those against the learning progressions, and if you look at the chart, then I've used the measurement progression a couple of times, the proportional reasoning progression, and the multiplication progression. Again, I want to stress that you're not expecting to be able to use all the progressions. You're just using the key progressions. The center column is the information, the wording that I've lifted directly from those progressions. So when I look down the right hand side, I've got actually that this task is mainly at step 6. It's at the top of the progressions. This is a step 6 task. So I'm expecting my learners to be able to perform at quite a high level. The next question, which comes from the second side of the triangle, is, well, are my learners actually at that level in terms of their math skills and their understanding of mathematics in order to actually be able to attempt that question, that task? So to summarize, the first corner of our triangle is knowing the demands. And the first thing to really do is to think forward into your teaching program and to identify a task where there is maths and numeracy involved, and to take that task and to map or to unpack the demands of that task in terms of its numeracy onto the numeracy progressions. I hope that this PowerPoint is of use to you, and please do make contact with the teacher training section if further help is required.